I'd like to call to order the January 2nd reorganization meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. In accordance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, this public reorganization meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education has been established by sending a copy of the public meeting notice to the Home News Tribune. In addition, copies of the announcement of this meeting have been sent to the Borough Clerk, and a copy of the notice of the meeting has been posted on the bulletin board outside of the office of the Secretary to the Board. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then please remain standing.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you don't mind, please remain standing. Thank you. It's customary whenever we lose a staff member that we always take a moment to pause and reflect upon that person. And unfortunately, over the winter vacation, we lost yet another staff member. Jacob Finkelstein passed away on December 25th. He was a speech and language therapist in the Sayreville Public Schools for over 9 years. He was a quiet, gentle, but very adventurous person. One person in which I had the opportunity and the privilege to get to know while I've been here in Sayreville, and just was a remarkable person and an exceptional speech and language therapist. He worked with so many of our students with disabilities, and many of them have him to thank for that gift of communication that they received through his great work. He's survived by his daughter, who he loved dearly, as well as his sister, who was his rock in the time of need. So if you don't mind, please join me in a moment of silence for Jacob Finkelstein. Thank you.
The first order of business is to announce the official results of the board election held on November 7th, 2017 for the three-year term candidates. Ms. Karen Rubio, 3,594. Mr. Christopher Callahan, 3,240. Mrs. Phyllis Bacco, 2,249. Mr. Ryan De La Uz, 2,149. Mr. Michael Macagnon, 1,971. The next order of business is the reading of the New Jersey School Boards Association Code of Ethics for all board members. I'm going to ask each board member to read a portion of the Code of Ethics. A school board member shall abide by the following Code of Ethics for school board members.
I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures.
I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing.
I will confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. Okay, I'm sorry. I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are run well, or well run, excuse me.
I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interests or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends.
I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and, in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its schools.
I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer. I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties.
I will refer all complaints to the Chief Administrative Officer and will act on the complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution.
The next order of business is the swearing in of newly elected board members. This will be done in alphabetical order, beginning with Mrs. Batko, then Mr. Callahan, and Ms. Rubio at the podium. You should stand at the microphone. You can just hold that, and then have your right hand.
I, Phyllis Batko, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Phyllis Batko, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A 12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Miss-
Congrats.
Okay, so you want to stand by the microphone.
Where you hold it?
Okay. Come this side. You might be able to step a little bit further back if you want to. Okay. And then put your right hand on. Try to speak loud.
I, Christopher Callahan, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Christopher Callahan, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A 12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
And Ms. Rubio?
This is Brian. Nice to meet you. Okay, I'm not using it. You don't have to worry. I, Karen Rubio, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the law of the people, so help me God. I, Karen Rubio, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of a member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A 12-1, and that I faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God. Thank you.
Mr. Callahan, Mrs. Rubio?
Callahan's right up.
Callahan's already-
He jumped right in. He jumped right in. The water's fine.
I will now take the roll call alphabetically. Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mr. Bashada?
Here.
Mrs. Bloom? Here. Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Syak?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio?
Here.
And Mr. Walsh.
Here.
At this time, I will open up to the floor for nominations for President of the Board of Education.
I will nominate Kevin Syak for Board President.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the nominations for President of the Board of Education?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
I need to take a roll call vote to close. Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to vote for Kevin Syak as President of the Board of Education?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
This will be the official roll call vote to elect Mr. Kevin Syak as President of the Board of Education. Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Take a breath.
Yes. She did a fine job. At this time, I'll open up for nominations for the office of Vice President.
I nominate Anthony Esposito.
Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Mrs. Bloom. Any other nominations? Can I have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. Can I have a roll call to close nominations?
Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to affirm Mr. Esposito as Vice President of the Sayreville Board of Education?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. Roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito, congratulations. Just a few brief remarks. First of all, I want to extend my thanks to Mrs. Bacco, who served as Vice President of the Board of Education for the last year. When I initially was suggested that I should run for president and Mrs. Bacco for vice president, I wasn't really sure how that was going to work out because oftentimes we have different philosophies. But I have to say, I think if nothing else, it led to a more productive debate among the board, a more open discussion among board members. And I think that the two of us serving together work to bring the board together and have those quality discussions that the voters expect us to have. So Mrs. Bacco, I want to thank you for your leadership over the past year. It's been a pleasure working with you. I'd also like to congratulate Mrs. Rubio and Mr. Callahan on their election to the Sayreville Board of Education, as well as Mrs. Bacco on her re-election to the Board of Education. And I look forward to working with you and the new ideas that you're going to bring and the fresh energy that you're going to bring to the board. So congratulations.
Thank you.
As we look forward to the upcoming year, this board is pretty fortunate in that we just completed, with the help of our community and many of our staff members, a Vision 2030 strategic planning process. So much of what the board is going to be looking at and focused on over the upcoming year is the output of that strategic planning process and how do we as a board begin to action it. And what excites me about that is it's not just something that is a board vision, it's not something that's just a superintendent vision, but it was something that Dr. Labby really wanted to spearhead in terms of developing the ownership among the staff, developing the ownership among the community to ensure that the strategy that we're executing on as a school district is not that of just a board or the superintendent, but really one that is important to the community and the staff at large. So I'm excited about the prospects that that strategic planning process holds and the items that it's identified. When you look back over the last 3 to 3.5 years, we've really made a lot of progress in terms of implementing new initiatives in the district designed to bolster student achievement. When you look at our middle school level, we've got more students taking algebra at the 8th grade level today than we did 3.5 years ago. Our kindergarten students are now looping. In addition to that, we've implemented a program called Effective School Solutions for our high school students who are at risk, in an effort to ensure that they graduate on time and that we provide support for them that they need. We've implemented new courses at the high school level. We've implemented the new standards-based report cards. We've made dramatic improvements with regard to special education. We have less students today out of district receiving special services than we did when I first joined this board. And when we first joined this board, we only had approximately 3,400 students. We now have 6,200 students. So the fact that with almost double the amount of students, we have less special education students out of district is a testament to the quality of education that we can provide for them here in Sayreville, as well as the cost savings that that entails for the taxpayers. And as we look forward to the upcoming year ahead, we now have a new strategic plan which is going to guide us in new directions for new innovative initiatives. So I'm really excited about where we're going to be heading in the next year, and I'm excited about the team that we're going to work with in order to take us there. So with that, are there any other board member comments just about the reorganization or our new board members before I move on to the reorganization agenda?
I feel somebody should have said present, just to honor Mr. McEnroe. Because we always say we're here. And
This is true.
he's present, so.
Well, there's a lesson there. Dare to be different. All right, hearing no other comments, we'll move on to the reorganization agenda. If the board is okay, I'm going to take the entire reorganization agenda, items 1 through 23 as a group. And then if you want any separated to talk about, just call them out. So for example, I would like us as a board to discuss item number 1. So we'll pull that from the agenda for a minute. Are there any other items that board members wish to discuss on the reorganization agenda?
12.
Okay, 1 and 12. Ms. Hill, if you could note both of those. Any others?
I have a generic question on all of them. If there's any of them that are changed, I'd like to know, like if the physician is new or something like that. If anything has changed, I'd like to know.
Are there any that are changed?
Like, do we change the physicians or any of the?
So, the affirmative action.
The affirmative action officer is now Mr. Aguiles, or Dr. Aguiles.
Yeah, the affirmative action officer is now Dr. Aguiles. That was previously me. The McKinney-Vento or homeless liaison, educational stability liaison was previously me. It is now Mr. Naster. I believe that is the only thing different.
So the physicians, the
And
insurance,
the
that's all the
treasurer,
same.
the treasurer of monies naturally is different than it was at this point last
Right,
year, but
but
we
it's
made
the
that
same.
change early in the year.
Okay, so if there are no other items to discuss other than number 1 and number 12, can I have a motion to approve the reorganization agenda excluding number 1 and number 12?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Callahan. Any comments on the reorganization agenda excluding number 1 and number 12? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bauca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Okay, items, the reorganization agenda excluding 1 and 12 are approved. On item number 1, the only issue I have there is I am unable to make the Tuesday, February 6th meeting. I was wondering if we could move that to Wednesday, February 7th. I'm away from the 31st to the 6th.
Fine.
Is there any opposition to that? Okay, so if we could note a change to Wednesday, February 7th. And then I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting schedule, item number 1, with the change of Wednesday, February 7th. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
By Mr. Walsh. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mrs. Rubio. Any comments on the meeting schedule? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Balco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
And then item number 12. Mrs. Bacco, you had a comment on item number 12.
Yeah, I don't ever remember having a board-stated engineer before. How was the process done to create this appointment?
This was just from recommendations we saw on the New Jersey ASBO website on what we should be approving every year, and this is the engineer that we've historically used. It doesn't mean we're entering into a contract with them for them to do any work. They're just our professional if we need to use somebody.
I think if we're going to start appointing an engineer, we should go out for an RFP process instead of just taking one, because we don't use one frequently, and we have used many different engineers over the years. So I don't want to just take one without going through the process.
Okay. Is there a need to appoint an engineer by law, or is this just a recommendation?
There isn't. And just like other professionals, like architects, for example, there's often an architect of record or an engineer of record in the event, as Ms. Hill is describing, it's needed, but it's not required by law. Absolutely not.
Okay.
And it also doesn't lock us really into any time period. We can still go out to RFP at any time. This was just have an engineer on record if we need one in the interim.
Okay, so if the board is interested in approving this, I'll need a motion. If the board's interested in going to RFP, I'll need a motion. If the board's interested in doing neither, I don't need anything. So is there any motions to be offered?
I'd like to make a motion to go for an RFP for an engineer.
Okay, I have a motion to go to an RFP for engineer by Mrs. Bacco. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Mr. Bashada. Any comments on the motion? Okay, Mr. Bush, my brother works for CME Associates, so obviously I cannot vote to appoint them. I'm assuming there's no issue with me voting to go out for an RFP, correct?
There would not be, correct.
Okay, just wanted to be clear on that. Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Balco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passed. We'll be going out to RFP, and we will not be appointing an engineer. That being said, we've concluded our reorganization agenda for this evening. The board needs to retire into executive session for no more than 30 minutes. There is one item of personnel, which is on this agenda that we need to discuss, and there is also an item of attorney-client privilege, which we need to discuss. So it's 6:55 now. I would assume that we're going to reconvene by 7:30. Can I have a motion to, and by the way, just for the benefit of the public, the board cannot go into executive session prior to the swearing in of the new board members, which is why we did not do this earlier. We're not trying to torment you. Can I have a motion to retire into executive on a matter of personnel and attorney-client privilege? By Mr. Bashada. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. Can I have the resolution read, please?
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of and action upon the hereinafter specified subject matters. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, and to receive attorney-client advice related to possible litigation in municipal court. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately. Mr. Belka?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Okay, we will return at 7:30 p.m. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can I have a motion to return to public?
So moved.
By Mr. Bashada, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Roll call, Ms. Hill, here or not here?
Mr. Balco?
Present.
Mrs. Batco?
Here.
Mr. Bashada?
Present.
Mrs. Bloom?
Present.
Mr. Callahan?
Present.
Mr. Syak?
I am present as well.
Mr. Esposito?
What the hell, present?
Ms. Rubio?
Present.
Mr. Walsh?
Present.
You are unanimously present. Dr. Labby, would you take us through your superintendent's report, please?
Absolutely, Mr. Sack. If I can bring your attention to Vision 2030 student achievement, that is actually A. There's only one item there. We're asking you to approve a standards-based report cards parent meeting on Wednesday, January 3rd. That is tomorrow evening at the Samsel Upper Elementary School at 7 p.m. That's it for student achievement. Moving along to governance, we're asking you to approve the remaining investigations and confirmed HIB incidences from the 19th of December through the 22nd of December. Technically through January 1st. I hope there were not any on New Year's Day.
There were not.
Good, thank you. You can find that on pages 11 and 12. And then finally, on personnel, we're asking you to approve the transfer of 2 teachers. You can find that on page 12, as well as we're asking you to appoint some new certificated staff for the 17-18 school year, and you can find that on pages 12 and 13. That's it.
All right, thank you, Dr. Labby. Any questions on the superintendent's report from the board? Hearing none, we'll open it up to public on agenda items only. If you wish to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Hearing none, we'll close public at this time. I'll entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's report.
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Bashada. Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Hill, please.
Mr. Balco?
Yes.
Mrs. Batco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The superintendent's report is approved. Any board discussion?
Took care of it.
Excellent. Hearing none, we'll open up to public for any item concerning the school district. And hearing none, we'll close public at this time, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, a second by Mr. Bashada. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much for coming. Our next meeting is Tuesday, January 16th.